Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Crampton Day. I'm the Executive Director from Colorado Business Committee for the Arts. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The very first piece of business, since I am working remotely, I apologize if there are any dogs barking in the background. Hopefully that will not happen, and I can get through my remarks quickly. And I also just want to thank all of you for participating. I think there's a number of you who are not perhaps as familiar with Colorado Business Committee for the Arts, CBCA. So we'll talk a little bit about who we are and our mission and other programming a little later on. But if you are new to CBCA, I just want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. This is our first virtual Arts and Industry Forum. We've been doing this series for a couple of years now, but this is the first time we've done a virtual format, which we're really excited about. We started to envision the Arts and Agricultural Forum well over a year ago, and we had a very different vision in mind for this forum initially, but I think it's really exciting where we've landed and ended up, and we have a great lineup of panelists and speakers today, which we're really excited to jump into quickly. And one of the benefits, I guess, of going virtual is that I'm really excited that we have people from all over the state participating in this today. So again, thank you. So today we're going to focus on how arts and ag can advance advocacy and economic investment across Colorado. I think, again, as I mentioned, we thought about this topic some time ago, but I think it's even more relevant than ever now, and really excited to dig in and, you know, share some ideas around innovation today and hopefully have some really inspired conversations. As I mentioned, we have speakers and participants from all over the state, Western Slope, Front Range, and the Eastern Plains, so I think it's going to be a really dynamic conversation. And before our opening performance, which is exciting, and panel, I'd like to thank our wonderful partners who support these events. Thank you to our 2020 Forum Series sponsors, the College of Arts and Media at CU Denver, the Denver Business Journal, Footers Catering, and the Melvin and Elaine Wolf Foundation. And I'd also like to thank Agriburbia for supporting this particular forum today. To share a little bit more about the College of Arts and Media, please join me in welcoming CBCA board member and Dean of the College of Arts and Media, Larry Captain. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Larry.
Oh, thanks, Kristen. Thanks so much. First of all, we're really glad to be here. The College of Arts and Media is Colorado's only arts and entertainment unit at any university that was founded at the intersection of arts, technology, and commerce. So all those things, arts, technology, and commerce, all have connections with agriculture. And I'm just excited to be here today and for us to have a part in this. You know, when you think about what they teach in school about agriculture, you know, there's natural selection and there's artificial selection and there's the weather and there are all the influences that go into creating the different components of food and feed and the other things that really keep our lives all going. And when you think about creativity and arts, some of those same elements also influence art and creativity. I want to share just one personal aside here about how important agriculture has been to me. I'm a Chicago boy, and my first teaching job was at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. Oh, did I learn a lot about agriculture and the lives of farmers and the lives of people who really feed our country and keep it going. And for 8 years, I was an Iowa Arts Council touring artist. And I was able to go out to very small farm communities, maybe for audiences of 20 or 30, play evening recitals, interact with people. And that's always stayed with me my whole life. I think of farmers as really elemental entrepreneurs and people that deal with the economic realities of the world. And the same thing can be said about artists and creators. So again, really glad to be here today, proud of our association with CBCA, Economic Development's at the heart of what we do in the College of Arts and Media. Kristen and CBCA team, thanks for the invitation. Look forward to continuing our partnership.
Great. Thank you, Larry. I'd now like to ask Quint Redmond, partner and CEO with Agriburbia, to share a little bit about their unique work at the intersection of agriculture and community development. Quint?
First of all, just to thank you to CBCA for understanding that agriculture is art and allowing us to participate in the forum and help out. And then obviously thanks to the panelists and Grace for their time and interest in this. I think there's some Agriburbia folks out there online, and there's not a more talented group of people you'll find that are working on all of the things that we have to do to make agriculture and art better. And then thanks to all the participants, obviously, for showing up and spending some time this afternoon. We cooked up a little video for you, pun intended. Go ahead, Meredith.
That's wonderful, Quint. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris Ross, Chair of CBCA's Board of Directors and U.S. Bank, to make a couple brief comments.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our sponsors and partners today, and to all of you who have chosen to spend some time with us. We really appreciate it. Just a few quick words about CBCA. CBCA's mission is to advance Colorado's creative economy by connecting arts and business, and we do that through advocacy, research, training, volunteerism, and arts engagement across the state. We are a robust membership organization, so if you're not a member, please consider joining us, with over 200 member companies in 25 different industries. 2020 marks our 35th anniversary for connecting arts and business in Colorado, so we're excited about that legacy as well. CBCA launched this Arts and Industry Forum Series in 2018 as a way to foster deeper dialogue at the intersection of arts and business. Each of the forums looks at the unique connections between the arts and a specific business sector relevant to Colorado. We invite you to stay connected with CBCA through our website and social media after this event to learn more about the ways arts and business work together in Colorado and how you and your company can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And without further ado, we have a really wonderful forum planned today. So I'd like to quickly announce our agenda with our lineup today. Here's what we have planned. First, we're going to kick things off with a live hip hop performance with Denver's eco music artist, DJ Cavem. Very excited about that. So that'll be a great follow-up to the very artistic and beautiful video from Agroburbia. Thank you again, Agroburbia and Quint, for that. Then we'll hear from our panel featuring Colorado Agriculture Commissioner Kate Greenberg, Audrey Sayles from Some Girls and a Mural, Richard Saxton with M12 Studios, Harrison Top of Top Fruits and Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, Dr. Ietef, Vita, DJ Cavem will be back on our panel. And then our moderator today is Grace Hanover with National Western Center. And Grace has been wonderful helping us plan this from the beginning, she and her team. So thank you to all of our panelists and our moderator today. We have some planned questions for the panel, but we really want to hear your thoughts and questions through the chat function. We really want to make this as interactive as possible, and we want to hear your questions as well. Real quickly, just a quick intro for DJ Cavem. He coined the eco hip hop in 2007. He didn't know that it would sprout into a global movement. His mission to rap about climate change, food justice, and plant-based food spread far beyond his Denver hometown. Growing up in Denver's Five Points neighborhood, DJ Cavem became a vegan at 14 and felt a calling to speak about these issues in his songs, especially since most of the neighborhoods that are considered food deserts were people of color. Since then, he's traveled the world as a performer, educator, and activist. His latest project, Biomimics, is being released. If I said it right, hopefully you'll correct me, thank you. Is being released as an album and a seed pack all in one. How about that for cool and artistic? To get people involved and spur listeners into action. And we're really excited to have you here today. DJ Cavem, the first time I saw you was at the Americans for the Arts conference a couple of years ago, and it's so wonderful to have you with our program today. So welcome, and with that, I will turn it over to you.
Word. Well, can you hear me well? Can you hear me really good? That's perfect. All right, so I'm so happy to be here with you all. I got my DJ, my brother, Il7 on the wheels of steel, and this is what it feels like to rock live and direct with you all. So it's such a beautiful opportunity. I'm just happy to see everybody's faces. So this is how we're gonna rock it, straight up. Hit it from the top, brother. Let's go.
In a time where nobody was going organic, there was one man who stood against the tide and changed the eating habits of a nation. From the people who brought you Deep Rock and the Teachers Lounge and the producers of Going Green Living Bling comes a holistic health extravaganza.
Yeah, live, direct, right here. Beautiful opportunity. Let me tell you what's going on. This right here is a performance coming straight out of the 5 Points. Your man DJ Cavem, live and direct, representing environmental hip hop. Hey yo, you ready? Let's run it.
www.djcavem.com.
All right. All we gonna do? Boom. Hit it. Check this right here. Mashed up in my garden, what the soil soft. Feeling like I'm all the protocol. When I say in the hearts, homie blast off. When they pull up in the garden, I'm the site boss. 100 seeds in the soil, got the price up. Compost tea, homie, that's a nice cup. And it took 3 years, that's a dice up. With the kids too knife, that's a slice up. Talking like they never change it. I feel so engaging, I feel so amazed. I've been gardening for days. I didn't find my spots to the right one. Soaking up the water, soaking up the sun. Honey for the bees in the dandelion. I got it guarded for the bees, keep the bees from dying. I see them putting 5G, that's that new. I just put that 5Gs for that water tap, homie. Yeah. And we growing. Got the garden for the trap and I'm out. I got the seeds for the trap and I'm out. What? I got the garden for the trap. Check it out, yo. Yo, shout out to my DJ. This is what we're going to do right here. Environmental hip hop is the best way to talk to young people about growing food, sequestering the carbon, and basically, we already know we need to do all the bioremediation we need to happen, putting the carbon back into the soil, but at the same time, we are that. We need to understand the deeper knowledge in that. You ready to hit him with the next one? First off, all we got to do is just pop it. I got something special for y'all. Here, brother. This is something for you right here. I feel really connected to what's going on, especially in California. So I'm gonna rock this one for y'all, all right? Check it. Open my neck. One foot the money. One foot the hood. One foot the money. One foot the hood. You're getting the culture. One foot the money. One foot the hood. One foot the money. One foot the hood. One foot the money. One foot the hood. Yeah. I ain't seen the stars in a week. Cali fires got us smoked out, can't see. Trigger stripped at the border, how can this be? They just win a piece of land just to go and grow a seed. Family colors like you and me. If we get strapped at the mall over shoe piece, we can march on the front line when they do peace. Lyrics always set the t-shirt, well, that's what I see. Open my neck, one for the hood, one for the money, one for the hood, one for the money, one for the hood. Keep it going, get it, for the money, one for the hood, for the money, one for the hood, for the money, one for the hood. Yeah. Water's hella foggy, city pockets full of flint. No solar panels in the hood, so paying your rent. And the kids getting sick, and that's a fact. And the feds still getting paid for all of that. How you supposed to grow in dirty water? I'm in the garden growing for my daughters. Water's like plants need to follow. Yeah, water's like y'all. I said one foot in my neck, for the hood. One foot in my neck, for the hood. One foot in my neck, for the hood. Keep it going, get it, look, y'all. One foot in my neck, for the hood. One foot in my neck, for the hood. One foot in my neck, for the hood. Keep it going, get it, y'all. Kids, girls, call signs in the West, spray all over the hood. Never thought that it could be good. And now the sheriff said that they gotta move. They wanna build a highway, and there ain't nothing you can do and tell them. It's like the jungle sometimes. They say you're killing the trees, corrupt land with the foreign diseases, wasting animals. What makes it harder to breathe? Make you fall to your knees. Reminisce the bees before you sit down, praying all for direction. Use your food stamps in the produce section. Get some land, harvest water, keep it moving. It's I 4 and 9. You got to show improvement. See me manifest it, you can hold the heat in the night. Hopefully get roll tight. Eat fresh, eat right. Watch what you say now. Watch what you do, homie. Watch what you say now. Watch what you do. Just for a shot. Right? Yo, the vibe is right. Y'all got enough time to rock one more? How do we feel? We feeling good? All right, bruh. This is what we're gonna do. Yeah, with that. Cool to live? Nah, we're gonna go straight to Sprout That Life. New stuff, brand new album, distributed in packets of seeds because we believe that urban agriculture is the best way to sequester carbon. All right? So all you got to do is just download the album. There's a track listing. Look, we dripping. We out here dripping in seeds right now. Biominutes. Yo, get it off the site. I'm going to tell everybody. Let's roll, brother. All right? Let's hit them right. Straight up. Yeah. Hey. I got so much seeds. I got no more land. Pull up in your block in that veggie van. Broccoli local like I always did. Give me a bucket of two. Watch me go plant in the streets, yeah. I got so much seeds, I got no more land. Pull up in your block in that veggie van. Keep my broccoli local like I always did. Yeah. Just to eat my rip up healthy food. Yeah. What? Put it up like that, yeah. Put it up like that, put it up like that, yeah. Bitch so fresh, bitch so fresh, blood is so clean, roll with the best, rose in my hood, throwing up the X, thirsty, wet, homie, flex, got the pocket full of seeds, what's next, farmers markets always gonna have a fresh, what, look at the way that I eat, eat. Yeah, you ain't finished your plate. Why are you falling asleep, man? Never too late. Be you needed to be. Get me out in the wood, up ready to put that trick, the homie, I'm gone. Big green homie, stop that life. Big green homie, stop that life. What? Big green homie, stop that life. What? Stop that life. I just want that gun and want to stop that life. I just want that gun and got to stop that life. What? I just want that gun and homie, stop that life. What? I just want that gun and life. Let me see like that. What? Let me see like that. What? Let me see like that. Kill it, bro. Yeah. Really though. We do this all day. We get really excited doing it too. One love.
Thank you, DJ Cavem. That was wonderful. I don't know about you guys. I know I was bouncing a lot in my little video screen there, but I think that was a great way to kick us off, get us pumped up for this topic, and inspire us today, because certainly your approach is so innovative and effective, and you're reaching a whole new generation. And thank you for what you do, and thank you for joining us and for joining our panel. So without further ado, let's just dive in. I want to introduce our moderator for today, Grace Hanover. She's the Associate Director of Programming with the National Western Center. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Grace. Take it away.
Thanks, Kristen, and thank you again, DJ Cavem. What a remarkable performance. So everyone, in the Zoom fashion that suits you, like, send the love and appreciation in DJ Cavem's way, chat it in, hit your reaction applause button. We want to make sure that despite us not all being in a room together, he's still feeling how much we appreciate it and we're moved by that performance. I am really delighted to be here today moderating a panel full of remarkable experts and artists from across Colorado, from across agriculture and the cultural sector. As Kristen said, I am the Associate Programming Director for the new National Western Center. The National Western Center is a campus that's in development. It's 250 acres, just 2 miles north of downtown Denver. And it's our mission to convene the world, to lead, inspire, create, educate, and entertain in pursuit of global food solutions. In other words, our project sits right at the center of arts and culture and food and agriculture. So really connected to this topic and excited to help reveal different corners of it with our panelists today. So I'm going to take a minute and introduce you to some of the extraordinary individuals we've got assembled around us on the screen. Each of them brings a different perspective, point of view on arts and agriculture and the intersection therein. So panelists, as I introduce you, after I read your little bio, I want you to answer a question for me to help the audience get to know you just a bit. So I want you to name an artist or a piece of art, a movie, a book, an author, a mural, or a Colorado farm product that has given you comfort during the pandemic. You can name both if you've got one sort of in each category going, and then give us one sentence on why. So DJ Cavem, we'll start with you. We already heard your bio, really remarkable, and we're just incredibly moved by that performance. So do you want to tell us what either piece of art or farm product has brought you comfort?
You know, it's amazing right now. I hope you can hear me right. I just switched rooms and microphones and everything. I think the best thing for me during this pandemic, honestly, has been mullein. Mullein has been growing in my backyard. I've been making tea out of it. I've been drinking it. It's actually kept me in the best health. Outside of being a vegan for over 20 years, I really don't get sick. So it was really profound to be able to still experience finding mullein on my paths while hiking at the same time in my backyard. So I think it's been a blessing as far as, like, you know, what really helped me stay in the right mind during these times, you know? What about you?
For me, I have been enjoying beans from my neighbor's backyard. We've got a good exchange where she'll grow some amazing vegetables and I'll hand her baked goods over the fence. So that kind of connection, both human and produce, has brought me comfort. Thank you for asking, and thank you for being here with us today. Commissioner Kate Greenberg, you are next. So we have the Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture with us today. Kate has worked the land out west. She's worked toward policy change in Washington. She's the former Western Program Director for the National Young Farmers Coalition, where she expanded access to capital, to land, to education for new and beginning farmers. So Kate, it's an honor to have you with us here today. And what piece of art or ag product has brought you comfort?
Well, thanks so much for having me on the panel today, and thanks DJ Cavem for that performance. I'd say on the art side, music of all genres bring a lot of comfort through all times, especially global pandemics. And I last week finally got out to Palisade, and I'm almost sick of Palisade peaches, though I don't quite hit that mark.
I love it. You can't go wrong with a beautiful Colorado peach. That's absolutely, absolutely perfect. Well, okay, next, Audrey. So Audrey Sayles is with us today. Audrey is a storyteller, and her medium for telling stories is murals. So she works with her cousins, Kayla and Stacy, to reveal the beauty of rural life here in Colorado through murals on things like grain silos. And she does that through their company, Some Girls and a Mural. So Audrey, we're really glad to have you join us and can't wait to hear more. What's bringing you comfort during the pandemic?
Just being in a rural area. I'm so thankful that I can go out, there's a dirt road, I can go take my dog for mile-long walks, beautiful sunrises, beautiful sunsets. You know, currently, unfortunately, with the smoke in Colorado, it's made for more beauty around, but you know, just being in an area, having that space, it's just very wonderful to get to experience the world around you.
Absolutely, those wide open expanses. It's like your field bathing experience as you're moving through it, and I'm sure great artistic inspiration for you and your cousins as well.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, Richard, you're in the hot seat now. Richard Saxton is an associate professor at CU Boulder, and he's a leader at M12Studio. His artistic work really resists definition. It's site-based, it's interdisciplinary, and it's deeply connected with the rural landscape and rural communities. So I'm excited to learn more about it from you today, Richard. What is bringing you comfort during COVID?
For me, always, I think it's the trout in Colorado's rivers, you know, number one. And then, you know, maybe the second for me, I mean, something that's sort of coming out. I've been interested in trying a lot of these Colorado-produced ginger beers that are so I found that to be, you know, the sharp, sparkling refreshness of them is a nice counter to, you know, quarantine fatigue.
I hear that. If you've got any hot tips on which ginger beers you like best, throw them in the chat link if you're willing to share the secret.
I will for sure. I mean, right now, I think, you know, the one that I'm drinking right now is the Gold. It's just from Golden, the Golden. I'll put a link in.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. All right. Last in the lineup, but definitely not least, dear to me and to many in the agricultural community, we have Harrison Top. Harrison wears many, many hats. He's the membership director at Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. And he's also an owner-operator at Top Fruits in Paonia, where they grow peaches, plums, cherries, and apples. In that work, Harrison is endeavoring to improve the soil and the tree health at his farm. And he also happens to have a degree in film sitting in his back pocket. So a perfect intersection of arts and agriculture that I'm definitely going to ask you about today. So thank you for joining us, Harrison. What piece of art or Colorado product is bringing you comfort?
Well, I think I'm just going to dip out and start watching this, the Captain Jean-Luc Picard reciting Shakespearean sonnets every day website for the rest of this session.
As long as you pop in at the end and share an insight from it, or recite a sonnet for all of us.
I think the thing right at this moment is that we grow apples in addition to peaches, and it was a pretty tough peach year, And so now that we're into apples, it's bringing a sense of accomplishment and a sense of satisfaction that I think we've been really missing all year long. So so really pleased to be moving into apples. And it's a little early. Usually apples come a little later. So I think my palate isn't quite ready for apples, but everything else is. So, and then, you know, on the farm, I think audio products, audio artistic products are some of the most important things, particularly audiobooks and podcasts. We spent a lot of tractor time and drive time behind the wheel doing deliveries. And I think my audio friends are probably some of the most important things that get me through any time, pandemic or not.
We'll throw your favorite audiobook in the chat if people are looking for road trip recommendations or things to carry them as they move about the city. Okay, so Commissioner Greenberg, I'd love to start with you. We saw from DJ Cavem's performance that art can be a really powerful tool for mobilization, for activism. And I'm wondering, in your position as the Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture, if you could mobilize artists across the state to sort of all work behind one critical issue in agriculture, what topic would you pick and why?
Oh man, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and you know, I think I'm going to try and cheat on the answer a little bit because there's so many issues and so many points of synergy. And I think kind of the way I've been working around this question in my head, just kind of thinking about what is the role of art and agriculture and what is the nexus point between them. You know, I think if artists were to really mobilize around agriculture, it's about building that connection point between communities that don't necessarily appear to have as much in common as we actually do. I think that's a lot of the folks on the panel here today embody such nuance to their life and such connection to communities outside of their own, that I think art can be a portal to that kind of interrelationship that's so crucial to agriculture in the state, especially as our population grows. And of course, so crucial to art and recognizing that art exists everywhere, not just in museums, not just in urban centers, but we have rural artists with us today who are connecting to their food, to their communities, to the land through art.
I love thinking about art as the connection between art and agriculture as a portal, like something that's sort of beyond this world and that takes you somewhere else entirely when it really lines up. But thinking about art outside of a museum context brings me straight to you, Audrey, and the work that Some Girls in a Mural do. Your work out on the Eastern Plains is designed to spark conversation, to bring up different issues. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of questions or reactions you're hoping to provoke with your work, and who do you hope sees it and engages with it?
Well, we hope everybody does. Honestly, I feel like out in rural areas, art is not, it's more of a want, not a necessity. And so when you talk about people paying for it, it's a big portion of their budgets. Art just doesn't really happen. You know, when we never in our wildest dreams, like we were praying that like maybe we would get one more mural out here. And I think we're on like 17 just within Lyman. People have really grasped onto it, and people go, you know, we didn't know that we needed it. It's just bringing life back to our communities. And it's just been such a wonderful thing. People, you know, ask like, where do you get your inspiration? Well, there's so much beauty around us. You know, we always hear about how, you know, you get into Colorado and everybody's always asking, where are the mountains? Where are the mountains? Well, Colorado is so much more beautiful than just the mountains. And I think for us, art is approached very differently in a small town than it is in the city, because art in the city, if your mural is there for a couple of years versus here, people are expecting your art to last 10 years. So what do you want to say? What do you want to portray? Our initial, the Heart of Harvest, which was on the flyer, is one of our most popular murals. And I think it's one of those that just resonates with anybody. It can be anybody. It's not just singular to Lyman, Colorado. I think for us is our biggest mission, and why people really want to bring art is to show people that modern farmers are educated, they are intelligent, they are here, they want to build confidence in their products, they want people to come visit. And I think that's probably our big mission right now, is to portray the modern farmer, not in bib overalls, not driving a tractor that's 100 years old, but for who they are and what they're achieving. And so for us, that's been really important. But I think that's, you know, it inspires us, and to see, you know, people coming through, parking, or sending us messages, just like it brought tears to our eyes because it made me think of me and my grandpa on the farm. And those people that aren't in rural areas, it can take them to a place, maybe a good childhood memory. So I think, yeah, just portraying modern agriculture.
That you're tapping into something about the universality of both like beauty and community through your art that doesn't require you to be either a farmer or a city dweller to appreciate. And at the same time, it's helping us update those stereotypes about what we might sort of bring to an image of a farmer. Richard, that makes me think about your site-specific work and how you are really deeply embedded in a place when you're creating a piece of art or an artistic experience there. How do you think about getting outside audiences, maybe urban audiences, to engage with work about a rural place without reducing it or stereotyping it?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I think just, you know, it's also, there's kind of a demand that we don't, you know. There's, you know, there's a couple of things that I think we think about with our projects, and one of the big ones is stewardship, you know, and I think that concept, you know, whether you're someone that lives in a rural area or you're kind of, you know, you have the resonance of a rural area inside you, or that, or whatever, pretty much anyone, I think, who has a deep connection to the countryside is understanding that concept of stewardship. And also, I think, therefore, you get into, you know, you get into ideas of reciprocity right away. And so that's sort of what the work is fundamentally about, you know. And I think keeping it there, you know, sort of keeps it, you know, there may be, of course, we're you know, your question's a difficult one because we like to perceive this urban-rural divide, you know, but which is really sort of more of a continuum than it is a divide. But yeah, I think coming at it from the approach of stewardship has been helpful for us.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, and also helping us and pushing me too to think not on a sort of polar, from a polar place, right, of an urban-rural divide, but it's a continuum. And, you know, Audrey was talking about that too, right? When we think about rural, we don't just think about the mountains, we should think about the plains as well. But your point of reciprocity, Harrison, I want to connect it into how arts and agriculture come together in the Western Slope. And thinking about, you know, maybe how art might be driving economic development in rural communities, and how it might also have some downsides. So sort of how can we make art and agriculture more mutually supportive or reciprocal in your community?
Oh, I don't feel qualified answering that necessarily. I even read the question beforehand and thought about it. You know, you know, I think in the Western Slope, you know, I think art definitely helps some towns feel like they're thriving a little bit better. You know, out here, we definitely kind of one town to the next, and the feeling can change dramatically based on the sort of the feeling that you get in the town, the economic conditions in the town. Art can bring a lot to a town. I used to live in a little town called Mancos, Colorado, which had a sort of an a reputation for being an arts community. I think they have an arts designation. The North Fork Valley also has an arts designation. These seem to be become somewhat magnets for people, while other towns and other counties that don't embrace it quite as much don't have quite the appeal. But then again, Delta, the capital or the county seat in our county, is the city of murals, and it's not exactly bringing in huge crowds. So so it's not a pure rule, I guess. You know, I think my interest is really, and Audrey talked about it a little bit, sort of what is that experience of the farmer or the person involved in agriculture, and how is it represented culturally? And in some ways, I think the representation of our own lives in our own communities, while important, is not nearly as important as the representation of our own lives in outside of our communities. And that, I think, is really where I'm most interested in exploring the topic of art and agriculture.
I love that. So then, Audrey, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. If we gifted you and your cousins with a grain silo or a giant billboard at the intersection of I-70 and I-25, so you're reaching Coloradans from all across the state, but really people living in a different kind of community than perhaps your own, what kinds of things might you think about depicting on a space like that?
I would say something very positive. I think that is, you know, listening to like just Harrison and talking about like what people want to see in art. I think so many people want to tell their stories. And I think in rural communities, not to say we're tired of talking about like sad things, but I think we want to talk about the connectivity. We want to talk about the positive things. Like I said, for me, I know some people don't think Eastern Colorado is a beautiful place to visit. You know, I was just driving home thinking about that question, and there was this big hill and there was wind generators and like just how the clouds were laying on the hills. It was just such a beautiful thing. And I think out here people are like, it's not that bad. It is beautiful. And we do live in this positive place. And I think for us, that would be, I wouldn't want to put something in the middle of Denver that doesn't mean anything to those people. But I would say, just to reiterate those feelings of we are connected, you know what I mean? And like, instead of focusing on how we're all so different, let's talk about the things that we do share. And just looking at the people that are here in the backgrounds, we all have similar goals, I think, in life of happiness and wanting success and all of those things. Let's focus on those things and the things that would bring us together, I guess.
Yeah. The focus on positivity is really powerful and is part of what can help people, especially at moments like this, tap into hope, tap into sort of a more beautiful vision of connection for a future, or of food for a future. And that's the stuff that really hits you in your heart, right?
Yeah.
DJ Cavem, your work brings both different topics, a different level of positivity to a genre of music that we might think about more often, connecting into problems and challenges. So will you talk to me and to the audience a little bit about what action you're hoping to inspire, or sort of what positive movement you're working on through your music?
Definitely. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity. I love every answer that I've heard to every question so far. And being the fact that I'm from Colorado, I've seen so much develop that I remember when just parts of Aurora and Montbello and Green Valley Ranch were all rural to me, you know? And I'm thinking about it like before this concept. So definitely I think about, you know, arts and where everything is growing for young people, growing up in the inner city, having elders who were growing food. Basically, they were growing cabbages and peaches all throughout the 5 Points. If you know anything about East Side Denver, there's a lot of orchards. Matter of fact, there was all throughout like 23rd Street to like, you know, Bruce Randolph. There was a lot of fruit trees that were growing. And so growing up, I got a chance to like plant my first apricot tree at age 3. A lot of young people in my community still are now dealing with the same thing, a lack of access and a lack of intergenerational dialogue. That is the basis of why I feel like the best thing for, you know, as an artist, you know, is for me to drop knowledge through wax. You know, I learned through some of the most profound hip hop artists. Believe it or not, I was listening to a song from the group home, really interesting group that came out in 1995, you know, working with like Gangstar Foundation. They had a song that talked about seeds, but their music was specifically around like this gangster rap. And they like dropped some knowledge at the end of the song. And I was like, you know what, if we can continue this conversation, we need to continue to not only just have sprinkles of knowledge. So I decided to create environmental hip hop, multiple different TED Talks around it. I have a record label that produces the first certified USDA organic hip hop album, releasing albums in packets of seeds as distribution. And not only have had this opportunity to get them in directly in the communities that are in need, but we see it. Civil unrest is a big issue right now. Matter of fact, people have not only been dealing with the fact that they don't have access to healthy food, and that has created a lot of food-related illnesses that we know that has contributed towards people having immuno diseases that, you know, can easily prolong COVID-19 and all these other issues. Food has been the medicine. So I've been talking about through my music, taking this opportunity to not only do culinary work. I was a personal chef for Wilson Chandler. I've been a vegan for so long that I've had the opportunity to help transform other people's lives throughout that time. And actually taking this to a perspective with, as a hip hop artist, not just dropping t-shirts and going on tour. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna release a juicer. Premiered that on Rachel Ray. Then I had an opportunity to speak at the White House and perform for the Obamas. And at the same time, received my PhD in urban ecology and agronomy, studying indigenous agriculture at Makerere University in Uganda. So taking this time to teach, study, and give back, and actually still run a record label, arts and agriculture is a part of my life. And I feel like, you know, as we start to talk about culinary climate action, regenerative agriculture, and other ways of actually taking this knowledge back to indigeneity, you know, talking to youth about going back into the rural areas who are from the inner city and creating this cultural exchange. Word up.
Well, it's like the power of that knowledge translated through accessible modes, right? The kind of the attraction of the music, the ability to kind of immerse yourself in that, and then have it become your lifestyle. It's really, yeah, I mean, it makes me think about how powerful it is to connect to young people in that way.
Yeah, so, you know, it's the biggest thing that we're doing. The foundation that I'm doing this under with my wife is called Vita Earth Foundation, or VitaEarthFund.org. You can check out all the work and how we're basically transforming young people, you know, through the way they think and the way that they eat. And also intergenerationally at the same time. You know, hip hop is the medicine.
I love it. Well, throw the link to that in the chat if you want to.
Perfect, yeah, I will.
Commissioner Greenberg, I hear a lot in our work at the National Western Center, this notion or this refrain that we just need to help people understand where their food comes from, and that is the kind of first step in creating positive change in our food system, or helping people appreciate agriculture in a different way than they do today. How does that phrase resonate with you? What does it mean to you? How do you think about the role that the arts might play in bringing about that understanding?
Gosh, well, you know, I think my first thought is if we could just get other people to do this thing, then everything would be okay. It's of course much bigger than that, and the, you know, kind of what we are up against as not just as agriculture, not just as rural, not just as urban, but just as a state, as a community, as a society, absolutely has to do with relationships. And it's also bigger than that. It has to do with policy, it has to do with funding, it has to do with who's in leadership positions to help influence decision making. But if we are to build all of those structures on top of a foundation that lacks relationships, then I think we're building a weak castle, if you will. It's really the foundation in my mind is our interrelatedness, is our sense of community with one another, is recognizing ourselves and others through agriculture, through the, you know, all that we share. I mean, what I love about this topic is, again, it weaves itself through us whether or not we know it. And, you know, I think that connection, that if we could just get people to understand, I would rephrase it, you know, I think it's essential that we cultivate that connection to where our food comes from, and we must continue to build off that connection to, you know, create the kind of future where we see agriculture thriving all across the state. We see those relationships thriving all across the state, and that supports what our communities look like. It supports healthy access to food. It supports healthy communities.
Thank you. I think that's a really beautiful expansion to bring it back to that human level of connection and relationships. And without those core foundations of trust and sort of knowing one another, the rest of the work it's not gonna take root. It's really not gonna stick. Richard, can you tell us about a project or an artwork from your past portfolio that either created that kind of powerful connection with a rural or an agricultural community and taught you something new in the process?
Yeah, and a couple of things. I mean, one thing I want to say is also M12Studio is sort of a research-based art practice, and that's kind of where we start. And some of the things we look at are things like, you know, numbers in philanthropy in rural America. And I've heard a lot of people talk about just how the impact of visual art in the community is immediately sensed as an impact. You know, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are major inequities in terms of both public and private funding and philanthropy. For instance, you know, in 2010, rural America was only seeing about 1% of the overall arts and cultural philanthropy in the country. And over the last 10 years, it's maybe grown to 5%. But, you know, we have 25% of our population in this country living in rural America. That's a huge inequity. We also have 75% of the US that is rural landmass. And of course, when we get back to those notions of stewardship, that impacts all of that space. So huge inequities. And if we think about what that might look like if things were brought to an equitable place, I think it would be quite profound on a number of levels. And I think specifically to your question, and maybe also some comments earlier, in 2012 and 2013, we collaborated with a group in Sweden. They sort of came over here, we went over there to their farm, and the project that we worked on there really was about bridging generational knowledge. It was called Elders Hill. It's sort of a land work. It's a large hill. And then we sort of built inside, we built I'm losing the word that I'm looking for at the current moment. Root cellar is what I'm looking for. You know, sort of this cultural bridge also between the Swedish and where we were. But the idea of the project was to look at local agriculture in Åland and use the knowledge in the elder community to sort of run workshops for younger people in the community to sort of understand both growing and canning and sort of working with a root cellar as sort of a vernacular structure. And I think the lesson there is that it's a lot easier than we think to bridge generational knowledge. We just need the resources to sort of make those spaces for those things to happen.
So thinking about making space, is there something that comes to mind, Richard, in our Colorado ecosystem that right now is creating that kind of space for bridging those connections?
You know, I mean, it's lacking, you know, I mean, this forum right here is fantastic, you know. I think my perspective goes beyond agriculture too. You know, I'm really interested in rural phenomenology, and I'm interested in how social space works in rural areas, and you know, how land use is sort of impacts the way we might see culture, the way it changes culture over time. So there's a number of layers. I don't know that we have any forum in the state currently that is there to handle the complexities that really exist both in rural Colorado and urban Colorado, and you know, try to avoid the binaries, but you know, you put them together, the complexities there are tremendous, and they're really important.
Yeah. Well, I think about that as maybe a call for all the people who are on listening in on the forum tonight. Producers, artists, people who support them, you know, what do we need to do as a community at this intersection to create that kind of space? So just a little nugget for everybody to think about. Okay, we're gonna take a quick sort of, it's gonna feel a little bit like a non sequitur, and then we're gonna dive into the amazing questions that the audience has been throwing us. But Harrison, I'm curious, you know, I teed this up in your bio. You're a fruit farmer who has a background in film production. And you said earlier, you know, you care a lot about the representation or the image that other people are seeing outside of your community of farmers. So how do you think about farmers and artists in common? What do they have in common? What can they perhaps learn from each other in your point of view?
You know, I guess an interesting anecdote is that when I had the opportunity to attend a film school and work professionally for a little while in film, and primarily in documentary film, and then did a big narrative project at the end, and I was by the time we were finished with that narrative project, I was feeling a lot like it was a very different experience to be behind the lens of a camera rather than an active participant in the subject matter. And so I think ultimately what pushed me out of film, many things coalesce to do that, but ultimately it was this feeling that I wasn't satisfied recording the experiences around me. I was much more, I felt like it was much more important for me to be a participant in the things that I was working on and recording. And at that time we were working on a project involving rural music and dance culture, which is a whole nother thing. Rural music and dance culture is really great. But ultimately, we did a lot of work around agriculture in preparation for that film, and so when it was complete, I moved into agriculture rather than continue with film and television. And now I've been in agriculture for the better part of a decade, and now I'm feeling like, gosh, I wish there was more people telling our stories. I wish there was more ways to talk about in a contemporary way what agriculture goes through. You know, I think we are, as an industry, I think we do love to play the victims sometimes in agriculture, but I genuinely think we're an industry that is at a very significant crossroads. We have been for a while now. There's a lot of, the economics of agriculture are really broken. There's a lot of hardship in our industry, but there's also a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of things that I think we as producers are doing that aren't recognized, whether it's contributions to the economy, whether it's contributions to climate. I think Kate said something really important about how you can, telling people where their food comes from without like a relationship there is pretty meaningless. And it's not like we can go out and just meet everybody in the state or nationwide and tell them where food comes from. And, and the occasional, 9 News story about Palisade peaches, which never ever even mentions peonia peaches, isn't going to do the trick in terms of how to create that relationship. But I think art does have the potential to create that relationship. I also think there's really dynamic stories that happen. It's kind of like that idea that when you have diversity, you're going to produce better, smarter, and more innovative work when you embrace diversity. And I'm sure, as there are many people here in the Colorado arts community, I'm sure people are frustrated all the time when it feels like New York and Los Angeles are responsible for the production of the vast majority of the art, and we aren't always as recognized. And then we in agriculture are even like one more step removed from that, I think. But I think there's a real possibility and a real opportunity for art to exist that is representing and building the relationship with contemporary agriculture. And because it answers a lot of the big questions that we as a nation are wrestling with, everything from trade to environmental impact of industry to, a really, I think, extremely profound story about how things like climate change are impacting people's day-to-day lives and impacting industries, and how people are attempting to respond to that.
Like a broadcast medium, but that can pack much more of an emotional punch. So you feel like you're getting a bit of that relationship when you can't go and shake the hand of every consumer who's buying a peonia peach. But it gives you a chance to help to connect across issues and across geographies too. Thank you, Harrison.
Can I?
Okay. Oh yes, go ahead, Audrey.
I really like the point Harrison kind of hit on, where farmers are having to be more creative. I think economically, budgets, all of those things. I think of the amazing technology, the science that is coming out, and I think farmers are having to become more immersed. They can't farm like their dads. They can't farm like their granddads did 100 years ago or whenever. And I think it's driving people. I mean, growing up on a farm, being a farmer's daughter, I think being a farmer, you have to be a problem solver. And so I think there's so many creative solutions. And so when we talk about just like the bridge of art, I know so many creative people, but they're doing creative things in different ways. It's not just maybe creating masterpieces of art, it's creating new technologies, creating new ways of doing things, but also revisiting. I mean, just like when we've talked about like regenerative ag, that's not a new concept. I mean, that's a very, very old concept. And it's like we're rediscovering it. And, these young farmers that are coming out, they're just as much scientists as they are a farmer. And I think I wish it would be more empowering to these young guys, young women, people in the urban areas that are growing. I mean, food, I just wish it would be more empowering. I mean, I know how I feel when I grow flowers in my yard. I feel like I rocked it. And, the fulfillment of farming. But I think to say living in a rural community, we don't have art programs, we don't have these things, that doesn't mean that creativity doesn't exist. And I wish we could get people to start thinking on a different level of creativity, not just in, I can paint a picture, I can draw this, but look at what I've created in general. Sorry, that was my 2 cents.
No, thank you. Thank you for, I mean, your passion about the topic is palpable, even across Zoom. So thank you for jumping in. This is a little bit of a lofty question, but I think it relates to the one of the stereotypes we've talked a bit about today, and that I know, Harrison, you spoke to specifically. So this is a quote from that I first heard from Richard Saxton, and that I think I know the origin of this question from one of my colleagues, but it's so paraphrasing. People perceive the rural place as the past, the urban place as the future, and that leaves us in this undefined present. So let's talk a little bit about how art and experience can help bridge past and present into this shared or collective experience. So if people perceive the farmer as being in the past, or even maybe sometimes the artist as being divorced from technology, how can we shift that? Who wants to tackle this? Feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
I'm sorry, Grace, will you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So people tend to perceive the rural place as the past, the urban place is the future, and that can leave us in this undefined present. So how can art help us bridge that, or sort of break down that divide of past and future, so that we're part of a more a shared or collective human experience that's not rural, past, urban, future, but something different? What can art do about that?
Wow. You know what? I guess I'll start on this one. I've definitely seen it happen in the community. I noticed that when I'm teaching young kids and I'm going into schools, the younger they are, the dirtier they want to get, right? The older they are, the more they're interested into hydroponics, aquaponics, anything ponics. They're like, yo, what? As long as I'm not messing up my nice shoes. And that's what the kids from the inner cities are saying. They want to go green. They want to be a part of the, this new green economy. But the green jobs that they want, they don't want to go and clean up oil on the Gulf, right? Or maybe even have to like do things that compromise their future for young people. A lot of young people that I see like in the urban communities, I feel like, especially like for myself, I was that one. I wanted to go to the mountains. I wanted to go into the fields. I loved going down the Snake River and going fly fishing back when I was a kid. Now that I think about like holistic health and like access and traceable source, I think about localizing a lot of that. And so young people are finding rich, nutrient-dense soil in the inner city where they're not tilling that much, and they're actually taking that and being able to sequester carbon and create those green jobs where they need it. At the same time, be able to address issues like food-related illnesses all the way down from heart disease to obesity, running rampant through the urban communities. And I feel like they do want to see that liveness of like bringing that indigeneity back into the city. And I think that's really about watching nature take it over naturally anyway. So big up to all the earth.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple thoughts on that. I think, following on that, and one of them is that okay, so that statement is full of myths too, right? And the Rem Koolhaas, the Dutch designer, just last year opened a show at the Guggenheim called Countryside: The Future, which is in direct opposition to that statement, right? Sort of proclaiming that's the space of the future. But it's also about understanding about what art is. And like we just heard, today's artist is not, in a studio. Sure, some people are making paintings, but for the most part, we have to understand that the contemporary artist is involved in music, farming, research, academic research, all kinds of these different things. The artist isn't just a singular, sort of archetype at this moment. And neither is the farmer. And so, perhaps in my thoughts, we need to sort of just collectively advance our sort of normalcy expectations from both of those fields, and then move forward. That's one thing that comes to mind.
Something that kind of came to mind listening to you just speak there. I think on an artist side of something, I don't feel like our work in particular would have been as popular as it is without having the experience and the understanding of what's going on and the subject matter. For example, we painted a really simple silhouette on a grandstand at a fairground this summer. And one of the images was like a little boy pulling a goat. And it was amazing how many people it resonated with that, because it's an experiential, it's an experience. People have to have that. And I think good artists bring a certain experience to a table. Farming is totally trial and error. Good farmers have tons of experience, good and bad. And again, I think that's just really big in both communities, is experiencing something. I think these kids, I'm a teacher in another life outside of my art. These kids are growing up behind a screen, and they're getting out, and now they're becoming adults, they're having kids. They want to experience something because they're not getting that fulfillment. And I think you know, if we can get people into rural areas and say, look, life is different. It's not to say your life is better or worse or anything like that, but it's different. You can come experience something. And I think people are really attracted to that. I mean, I don't know how many more articles I need to read about, like, people don't want to go to massive public gatherings as much anymore. I mean, obviously outside of COVID, but they want to go experience something. They want to have those feelings of, you know, like DJ says, growing a tree when he's little, having that connection. And these kids are growing up without that. And I think it creates a feeling of being lost. And I think agriculture, I don't think it's a thing of the past as much as a sense of belonging. We talk about the stewardship. I firmly believe being in an agriculture community is a commitment to a way of life, but it's a commitment to each other. Yeah, I'm going to pay more at the grocery store for food, but I have to have that grocery store. Yeah, I could go to the city, I could do it. I could go get all of my stuff versus going to the local hardware store, but that reliance on each other, it creates that sense of community. You know, I think those are the things that people are really looking for. And I think that's a draw to rural areas.
Let's take another question from our audience.
Okay, hit it, Grace.
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Harrison. Sure.
So not, I don't mean this really, but I think until the culture, whether that's the political culture, whether that's the commercial consumer culture, whether it's just culture in general, I think unless we do begin to pay more attention to agriculture, we will be a thing of the past. You know, it's when you look at aerial maps of our area over the past 20 years, you'll see orchard agriculture 20 years ago thriving. Most properties were fruit tree properties, were orchard properties, and as you go through the years, there are fewer and fewer orchards left. You know, they're replaced by hay, which is still technically agriculture, and ranch agriculture is still a really important part of the community and of what's going on. But the reality is there are fewer farmers, there are more bigger farms, and the agriculture in the middle, the people who exist and in many ways kept a lot of our rural communities alive for a long time. I don't want to say they're disappearing, but it's not the strength that it once was. I think that is a problem with the fact that we are not more present in art, is the fact that, you know, they're much bigger forces than the fact that we're not being portrayed in contemporary movies or whatever. But I do think that until the culture and until society really wants to pay more attention to agriculture, I think we're going to be in a situation where we continue to see those people who are able to survive and succeed in our industry decline.
We sit at an interesting moment in regard to public perception of agriculture, in part because the pandemic has increased like your average Joe's awareness of the food system, and thinking about food insecurity and, you know, what's available at their grocery store, where does it come from, looking for more local food sources. One of the audience members asked about food security. Food security is a huge concern in our area. They're specifically speaking about the Roaring Fork Valley. COVID shone a light on it. This person's curious to know how the panelists feel art and agriculture can come together to specifically shine a light on this issue. So is there one of our panelists who's particularly passionate about that or wants to speak to how arts and ag can work together to shine a light on food insecurity or sort of COVID's impacts on the food system?
I guess I'll just kind of chime in. Harrison and I had known each other prior to this, and through the organization he's with, you know, we had tried to find a space where maybe we could do something like that. We had a lot of in-depth conversations about, you know, food in Colorado. We typically think about, if I say Eastern Plains or Colorado produce in general, a lot of people think corn and wheat. Well, we're so much more. Our economy, especially when it comes to food, is so diverse. I would love to bring awareness to that Colorado grown stuff, we can be almost self-sufficient on it. I mean, we grow so much food. We have great climates to do those things. And it's crazy to me to go into a local grocery store and we can't get fresh produce when we have some of the best producers in the world within driving hours of us, or within 30 miles, we could be producing these things. And it's so frustrating. And I don't know, I mean, as an individual, I don't know who you can talk to about that. I mean, Bountiful Baskets was insanely popular here. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but it was basically like a food truck thing. They bring in all these vegetables, you'd sign up for it. It was like a weekly or bi-weekly thing, and it was fresh produce, which we can't get in our local stores. And so, I mean, there's stores, and granted, you know, COVID has shut a lot of stuff down, but in schools, we can't even have salad bars now. They can't serve those things. And what are the impacts of that, especially when, you know, local schools are getting high tunnels, they're producing their own food specifically for that need. So food scarcity is just a frustrating topic, I guess, in my mind. And I'm frustrated along with the person who asked that question, because Colorado could be producing so much. And it's just really sad. And I would love, I mean, if there's a way through National Western, we've talked about it, through Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, to shed light on it. And it's just finding the space, finding the right time, you know, for it.
Sure. And the funds too, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the time it's an investment or a money question. DJ Cavem, did you want to weigh in? Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, so that's an intense answer right there. I feel you on that. As far as like how we've addressed that, coming from the 5 points, it was always like that. It was a food desert, or should we say a food swamp? The food was a lot of processed. You already know, we can go down the line, but the conversation was about people wanted to like create. So creating the grow house around like 2008, it was an interactive greenhouse literally about a 3 mile radius, like 6 mile radius was that's about the only time we could probably find like a lemon in a liquor store. So it was hard to find like fresh produce, all right? So that's what it's all about. I know exactly where everyone's coming from. Sometimes it's deeper than just growing your own food, but like being able to have that access, like, yeah, creating those greenhouses. Tower Gardens is pushing right now. People trying to like literally grow in their closet. I see people eating sprouts and going microbiotic in a lot of places where it's low access, you know, and people growing on top of their refrigerators. You know, this is a different conversation. And I feel like in urban communities where they're still having those same food shortages, you know, we've been able to like tackle that like same way, like right here, like, you know, it's like 12 fruit trees on this property. You know what I mean? Like, it's important. I think that, you know, you have to have time and access and like, you know, friends and like your own peppers growing and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like every now and then. But really, I look out for the farmers market. I look forward to going to support those local farmers who are creating that traceable source, and you can do so too, which is exactly why, you know, at the beginning of COVID, I realized that I needed to, you know, not just sit on these seeds, and we decided to distribute them in communities that were in need. So, you know, yeah, straight up.
Thank you. Kate, we're going to send the last question your way. We've talked a lot today about potential ways for the arts to support agriculture. And I'm wondering if you can help us to flip that in the other direction. How might we use agriculture to help support the arts and culture sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point because it's mutual, right? And that's the point of this conversation, is the mutuality of sort of our two industries, if you will, or ways of life or ways of being in the world. I think there's some chat comments on this, you know, artists and residents on farms. There's a lot of farmers who are looking at diversifying revenue streams through agritourism, you know, being an example. There might be opportunities there to explore. I think there's agriculture can support art in many ways. I mean, I love what Audrey was saying about, you know, creativity in agriculture spans beyond 2D art, you know, it spans beyond painting, drawing, spans beyond music and writing, and includes all that, but it's also bigger than that. And I think kind of taking that lens of ingenuity and creativity that it just is embodied in agriculture, it's embodied in our communities that are agricultural, whether urban or rural, and putting that, kind of bringing that into the world in a way that allows people to jump on board, in a way that connects with people. And again, there's so many different forms of media that can be that connecting piece between us. And I'm, I just keep coming back to these two ways of being in the world, through agriculture and through art. They're so rooted in the human and in the relationship with one another. And I think what we face, coming our way, embodying that relationship, finding ways that we connect with one another through arts and through ag is going to help us be more resilient in the long haul as well.
Resilience is such an important focus of conversations right now in light of the pandemic. So thank you for sharing that insight. And the good news is, we're going to get a chance now to make those human connections. So if you asked us a question in the chat as an audience member and we didn't get a chance to share it with our panelists, be sure to bring it up in your breakout group. And let's give all our panelists a really warm Zoom round of applause. Thank you guys for sharing your insights, for being here with us from across the state. Really, really grateful. So Kristen, with that, I'm going to turn it back to you to share closing remarks.
Thank you, Grace. You did a wonderful job moderating. And thank you all the panelists. I think just from looking at the chat and all the comments in the chat, there's just so many great ideas being shared. And one of the last things I just shared in the chat was one of our goals of these arts and industry forums is to start a conversation between the arts sector and these various industry sectors, and see if there's enough interest to continue the conversation. And that can happen in different forms or affinity groups. And so there are some wonderful people at the table here today and involved, not just as panelists, but people like Donna from Worm Farm Institute that has been doing some of this work for 20 years that I'm sure we could all learn a lot from. So if you have an interest in continuing this conversation, I'm sure our team at CBCA would love to facilitate continued conversations, perhaps in a less formal manner. And then I also know National Western Center has some really great work that they continue to do that perhaps this could weave into, not to put you on the spot, Grace, but perhaps would be a fit. So I just wanted to make that notation there. If there's interest, let us know in the chat. Can you please all join me? You can use your little clap function in your Zoom if you want to thank our sponsors once again, because without them, we wouldn't be able to deliver this today. So again, CBCA's 2020 Forum Series sponsors are the College of Arts and Media at CU Denver, the Denver Business Journal, Footers Catering, and the Melvin and Elaine Wolf Foundation. And thank you again to Agriburbia for supporting this forum today and for sharing that wonderful inspirational video to kick us off today. That was quite artistically done, I will say, Quint. So thank you again to our panelist partners, including National Western Center and DJ Cavem for his performance. Finally, please stay connected to CBCA, especially if some of you are just getting to know us today. We've been offering a lot of webinars and virtual events to advance Colorado's creative economy, especially during this challenging and unprecedented time. And we're offering our members and their employees more free cultural opportunities to stay connected to the arts, as well as really have mental health breaks during all of this through artistic experiences. We're also building a network of statewide cultural champions, and would love to have you involved. We really want to identify those cultural champions, especially in those rural communities that we've been talking about today, and outside of our Colorado creative districts. Thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Peace. One love.
Thank you.